What's up, guys? Welcome to another Trade Destinations video. And this time we're going to be talking about Filip Forsberg, who is back in the trade rumors. And it's interesting because Nashville's been pretty good this season. They're competing for a playoff spot. Filip Forsberg's having one of his best seasons
Yeah,
of his career, and he's also on a contract year. He's 27 years old. He's a left winger, and he's currently getting paid $6 million per season. But why do the Nashville Predators want to trade him? Well, the problem is that according to David Poile, he feels very uncomfortable having Filip Forsberg unsigned heading to the trade deadline and heading into the playoffs. Because if he chooses not to sign, they're gonna get literally nothing in value for him because he's gonna walk as a UFA uh, during the 2022 free agency this year.
yeah,
So essentially, I'm thinking that they want to make a hockey deal in order to get somebody that's effective just in case they do make the playoffs, which I think they will make the playoffs. And they're not going to want to be weak on the offensive end because they lose Forsberg because he's unwilling to sign. I know he was unhappy when they traded Arvidsson during the offseason, and he voices displeasure. Either it was on Twitter, Instagram, or like an
it's
emoji,
Instagram.
or it was Instagram.
Yeah,
And right there was rumors, that they kind of started. Okay, is Forsberg going to leave? Is he going to stay?
mm,
And then things went quiet when they started the season. They started doing well. Johansson, Duchesne started picking it up, playing uh, living up to their expectations and living up to their contract.
hmm
And yeah, so things have been going well in Nashville. But now we're hearing that, maybe Philip Forsberg might be moved heading into the trade deadline. So, guys, what are your thoughts on Nashville potentially moving Philip
I mean,
Forsberg?
it kind of makes it, it. People don't really understand it. I mean, it kind of makes sense from a certain perspective because Nashville have a lot of contracts, like a lot of big contracts. Duchesne and Johansson being one of them, and I know that there based on what was said and stuff that apparently Nashville don't want to pay him higher than what Roman Yossi's making, and so I think there's a lot of question marks regarding that. But I think Nashville ultimately their goal, and I think Philip Forsberg's goal too, was to come up with a contract a contract extension. The thing is, we're at a point now where maybe that's not happening. Maybe they're not going to probably end up signing a contract, and so we're here. And the thing is, if you're Philip Forsberg, you're on a career year this year. You've already got 27 goals. He's on pace for 40. 40, 45. So he's doing really, really well. And so I think in terms of trade and in terms of what Nashville could get back for him, it could be huge. And obviously, if the team that gets Forsberg, if they do decide to trade him, will have to sign him too because he's going to be a unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So
According to what I read, because I know you did mention the contract, they are willing to sign him from $8 million to $9 million,
yeah,
and they're hoping that it's a non-movement clause. So that's their expectation for Philip Forsberg. If he does hit the market, there's a chance that maybe he might get a little bit more. And also, it's also the destination that plays a factor as well. The team that he's going to be playing with. I highly doubt that there's not going to be a better team than the Nashville Predators that are going to be interested in a guy like Philip Forsberg because he's a goal scorer, right? Just like Brock Besser. They're elite, snipers in my opinion. The thing is with snipers is that they're somewhat one dimensional, um, and inconsistent as well. And we've seen Philip Forsberg being inconsistent at times, but this year he just keeps on scoring and scoring and scoring. And like injuries and COVID, like they haven't stopped him whatsoever. He's been their top guy in my opinion.
yeah.
And either is it because like he's playing for a contract? Is this really what Philip Forsberg is all about? Did he finally reach his peak? And this is his prime because he is 27 years old. Normally that's prime time, 26, 27, 28. So there's a lot of like things to take into consideration on why he's playing like that. So Chris, do you want to say anything or you want to start
Yeah,
us off?
I honestly I don't see them trading him away for like picks and prospects. I would see maybe two contending teams that are maybe in the same situation as Nashville or in a little better situation, and maybe do like a one for one deal. Like, oh, my, somewhat top scorer for your somewhat top scorer, make a switch. Nashville will probably get like a player that has maybe another year left on the contract, and then we'll deal with that when the time comes. And
But they're
like,
gonna have to throw something in because he is a UFA, so they can't. It's gonna have to
well, I
be like
mean,
a
I
UFA
I
for a
think
UFA.
I think it's gonna be one of those deals like Max Pacioretty, where he gets traded to Vegas and he signs right away. Like it's part of the
Yeah,
deal.
I I think
Well, that's what he
personally,
wants.
let's get right into the teams there. But I
Yeah,
personally think, and I want to mention this team first because I kind of just want to get rid of them right away. And the reason I want to get rid of them right away is because I just don't see it happening with the amount of cap space and already tied up to 4 players. I know that there's been links about potentially Toronto looking for a forward, and there was talks about JT Miller. I don't see them getting Filip Forsberg, and I don't see how they make it work unless they trade one of the big four. So to me personally, I think that one's kind of the unrealistic one, and probably the one that I think like is unlikely to happen. So yeah,
Call me crazy, but I see them trading away Mitch Marner, William Nylander for Philip Forsberg.
I don't think
well,
so.
I don't see that happening because, and this is why they need a top six left winger. Ever since Hyman left, they haven't really
Yeah,
addressed
but
that. Yeah,
Bunting's been
you could
that.
say you
Bunting's been that.
yeah, you could say Bunting. You can make a case for that, but the fact that Kerfoot is in the top six right now, and Toronto's struggling defensively and goaltending wise, their main uh, job heading to the deadline is acquiring a defensive defenseman, especially that Muzzin is out, and we don't know how long he's going to be out for. And the fact that Mrazek is just not good enough to help Campbell, and Campbell is burnt out, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He's gassed out, and letting Frederick Anderson was a big mistake to let him walk for nothing, because you have to take this into consideration. Campbell played his first season as a starting goaltender last season, and now you're like, okay, let's give him the full reins of the number one goalie, and let's see what he does. That's too risky. And when you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, where there's high expectations and there's a time window with a certain amount of plays that you have on the team, it's time to win now. And letting go of things like that, it's just creating more holes. And I understand why they're interested in Philip Forsberg, because he would fit the top six perfectly and fit on the second line with John Tavares and Nylander, and I think that would be a beautiful line. And he would potentially play the first power play as well. But it's all about the cap, like Luca was saying, and they have other needs that are more important, and they
Yeah.
have to stop worrying about addressing offense, because
But
offense
you see,
is not the
that's
answer.
I think that's the strategy they're going for, though. I
And
don't
but
really.
it hasn't worked. It hasn't worked. There's a reason why they always knock down the first round of the playoffs, because of the defensively they're not good. They're not a good shutdown team. They don't play a defensive style. They don't even try to play a defensive style. They play too offensively minded. So that's why I see, and that's why I agree with Luca. That's why I do not see Philip Forsberg getting traded to Toronto.
I mean, it's a possibility. I mean, I wouldn't look. He's made crazy moves in the
It-
past. I wouldn't listen. I'm not saying it's gonna happen. There's probably like a, I don't know, 95% chance it doesn't, but there's still a 5% chance
There's
it
there's
does.
no the only way Toronto gets Forsberg, and I'm being dead serious, is if they trade Nylander. First of all, the Leafs
Yeah,
would
and
never trade
Yeah,
Marner.
they would have to trade one of the big four
They're
guys or
they're in
five.
cap hell. They're in cap hell, and right now they're trying to manage money with putting
Yeah.
Muzzin on long term injured reserve, and trying to
The
like send people down, send people
yeah.
up in the minors to
The
the
other
big
thing
team.
that I'm
So
the other team that I think we should probably rule out, at least for the trade deadline, I'm saying, is the New York Islanders.
yeah,
I know that the reason why I think we should rule them out is, number one, I don't think they're going to make this move during the trade deadline. I just don't see it happening. And I think the other thing is, too, the asking price is way too high. And if you're the Islanders, you're going to bank on Forsberg going to free agency. And if Forsberg goes to free agency, then the Islanders, I think, are going to be huge players in that. But I think for the trade deadline, at least now going into the trade deadline, I just don't see the Islanders being in it.
and here's the problem why. Because they need to get rid of all those old guys, okay, that are literally taking up so much cap space on the team. The team's not going anywhere. They're too defensively minded. But the reason why we're connecting Forsberg to the New York Islanders is because, like we mentioned in a New York Islanders video that you guys could check out, they need a guy to supplement Barzal's style of play. So it's essentially they need a sniper. We spoke about Besser in our last video. Now we're speaking about Forsberg, guys that shoot the puck on net, goal scorers. Even though if they're not consistent or whatever, but guys who score more than 20 goals, and they don't have that on the team. You can make a case, okay, Anders Lee, but Anders Lee does not play like a $7 million player. They need a superstar elite sniper. And getting a guy like Forsberg, like you were saying, that's an off-season move. They need to shed all those contracts out, make room for him, and sign him. And again, Lou, the GM we know he is, he likes his older guys. Is he really willing to pay that much money for a 27-year-old? Not only does he not like spending money, he's always been conservative with his money. He doesn't like going after younger guys. He seems to opt for
Yeah.
veterans all the time.
I also think. I mean, I also think that, like, just personally, I just don't see like, they don't really have the players to make this type of trade, anyways. At least right now. And the other thing that I'm going to say is, and I want to not rule them out, but it's unlikely, and I think the reason it's unlikely is because I think there's other priorities this team wants. I mean, they're linked to every single player pretty much every single player, and that's
Let
the
me guess, the
Rangers.
New York Rangers.
New York
And
Rangers.
I just think personally, I just honestly think personally, like, I mean, I do think that could happen. I think personally, they're going to look at other players. They're going to look at JT Miller. They're going to look at Lehkonen. They're going to look at guys that I think they're going to be able to not only keep, but I think, like in Lehkonen's case, he's a restricted free agent, so he still have his rights. In JT Miller's case, he has term on his contract. I think they're going to want a guy that they're going to have a little bit of term, especially on offense. So I think
Yeah.
with Forsberg, if free agency comes, maybe, and it all depends on how the Rangers do. But the Rangers' top six is already great, and Lafreniere is already playing really, really well. Now he's starting
It's
to
very
find his feet.
unnecessary. It's more of like an
So the
inquiry
move doesn't make
on their
sense to
part.
get Forsberg.
They're just trying to test the market. Okay,
Yeah.
like what's your value? What do you want for him? And that's a good point that you brought. They want a guy who has a two-way type of game. Miller, he's good offensively and he's good defensively, and he can play the wings and he can play at the center. Lehkonen, shut down a type of player, plays very good defensively. The top six, like you said, it's already solidified. So again, this is just this classic case of New York Rangers being very nosy heading into the deadline and literally inquiring about every single player because they want to see what everyone's value is. Maybe because they're wanting to see like what the market is like, what's essentially going to set the market, so they know what they're going to have to give up for a guy that they want. But I think that's all it is. So again, I'm going to rule them out as well, and that leaves us to three more teams. We have Detroit
yeah.
up next.
Detroit, and this one I think could happen. And the reason I think this could happen is because Detroit, I think, is one soup. Like, and obviously they've got Sider, they've got Raymond, they've got Larkin, they've got Bertuzzi.
They got a
who I
young
really,
core.
really like. I think adding Filip Forsberg, and I know yesterday we talked about Besser. I think adding Filip Forsberg makes a ton of sense for this team. And the reason why is because if Filip Forsberg gets added to Detroit, and they add maybe one more defenseman, and by defenseman I mean like a top four defenseman
And a backup
maybe,
goalie for
or a
Nedeljkovic.
backup goalie, Detroit's going to be a playoff team next year.
Well, they're already pushing for a playoff spot, even though they're like, I would say
they're
they're out of it. They are the closest
I
team
just
to
think-
make the playoffs
Yeah,
outside
I
the
just
wild
think
card.
Here's where I disagree with this one. I think Brock Besser would make more sense since both Vancouver and Detroit are not really going to the playoffs. And I think if Nashville was right now currently in a playoff spot, they're not going to give up a player for two players that are one's like an NHLer and one's like on the cusp of making it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right?
Like,
Nashville,
you still want to be competitive. They're
Nashville's
going to ask
trying-
for a player who's ready to play.
but Nashville's trying to maximize on their value, right? And they don't want to lose Forsberg for nothing. If they can't get him signed by the trade deadline, they're risking losing him for nothing if they don't.
My
bring him
trade
back.
offer from the Detroit Red Wings. Again, this is a guy who's been connected to so many rumors because he needs a change of scenery.
Zadina.
You have Zadina. You throw in a first round pick, and then you throw in like a B or C prospect, or maybe someone that is not in their top 5, maybe someone in their top 10 or top 15, and that would be a guy like maybe William Wallinder. So I
Yeah.
mean, it would have to be multiple pieces going towards Nashville. Again, even though Nashville wants to make a hockey deal, if they can get a guy that's good enough for the playoffs and that reaches I don't know, equals Filip Forsberg's value in terms of like 1-for-1 deals, they're gonna have to go the route of acquiring a first round pick along with prospects, and they may not like that. But let's all be honest here: Nashville is not a team that's going to go far into the playoffs. They're more of a first round knockout, and they're in the middle right now where they have young guys, but they also have aging guys. So if I'm them, take the best deal possible. Don't try to make this a hockey deal. Don't try to force people's hands. If people are willing to give you prospects and picks, take the goddamn best deal. It's as simple as that.
I
Because this
agree.
guy is gonna walk away, and I think he's not gonna resign with Nashville. And I think he's playing good because he wants out. He wants to maximize on on the number
Yeah.
of money he could get on his next contract. It's as
And
simple as that.
and to me, I agree with everything too. And I think the other two teams that we're going to talk about, this one I think we talked about it in the Besser video, and they were linked to Besser, and I think they were linked to JT Miller too. But the New Jersey
Both
Devils,
teams that we're mentioning
yeah,
right now.
that's it. Well, I think New Jersey Devils in potentially in on Filip Forsberg makes a lot of sense too, because I think if you look at the Devils, right, I know they're looking at goaltending right now and whatever, they're unsure about Blackwood and all that stuff, but I think adding a left winger of Filip Forsberg's caliber to a Devils team that has Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, like we mentioned yesterday in the
That
Besser
Severson
video,
too on
it's gonna be
defense.
it's gonna be huge, and I think we talk about Nashville wanting players back. Well, I mean, if you look at the Devils this season and you look at the players that they have, there's definite if they want to look at a hockey deal, I'm saying Andreas Janssen's a guy that maybe comes to mind. Maybe Thomas Tatar is a guy that they moved. Pavel Zacha, like you mentioned yesterday as well, was another
Yeah.
one that. So Nashville, in terms of getting players back that are NHL ready, there's definitely a possibility there in order to get the best asset possible. Now, it all depends on what Nashville's looking for and what they're trying to get. But I don't think New Jersey moves their first round pick
And they could sign him too because you also have
believe to.
Subban, who's gonna leave as a UFA at the end of the season. He's not gonna resign, in my opinion. I don't think they're interested. And
No,
I
I
think
don't think so either.
PK wants out of New Jersey. He wants to probably come back to Canada, maybe a team
Well,
like
listen,
Toronto.
even if he does stay, they still have $24 million. So
So, like, look, they're a team with money. Detroit's a team with money. And the last thing we're going to be talking about to conclude this episode is the Los Angeles Kings, who so happen to be in a playoff spot for the moment,
They're the best.
and they're playing very well. They're a team that's looking for a winger. They have been linked to Brock Besser. They added Arvidsson in the off season, but they're willing to add more now. And they're a team that I think they are aging in terms of like having guys like Drew Doughty, Anze Kopitar. I mean, even adding Philip Dano, he's not the youngest guy either, and having Dustin Brown too. But they do have younger guys, and they
do you
have money too.
do you see them making, let's say, I mean, I would maybe trade, what about a first round pick and Alex Yafalo? Is that how you pronounce it?
No,
I don't know.
Iafalo's gonna stay. If anything, it's gonna be Gabriel Velarde that's gonna be on the move.
Oh, really? You think it's going to be that great of a
Yeah.
prospect?
Again, as much as Nashville wants to do this, they're not getting a hockey deal out of Phil Forsberg. If they make a deal, they're gonna
I
get
mean,
prospects and they're gonna get a first round
I
pick.
mean, I mean, they could, and the reason why I think they could get a hockey deal is because, look, I have followed this season, like, and I know that LA probably doesn't want to trade him, but if
They want
you're,
to add. They don't
yeah,
want to give
I
up.
know that they want to add, but what I'm trying to say is Forsberg's an upgrade on Iafallo, regardless of how you look at it.
Yeah.
And so if Nashville wants Iafallo, I know that LA's trying to add, and I get that, but you make that deal every day of the week
Yeah, because
because
Phil
Philip
Forsberg is
Forsberg's
so
a
much
much
better.
better
He's
player.
established too,
I would trade a
and they
first. I
could sign
honestly,
him to a contract extension as well.
but I agree with Chris in the point of I would trade Forsberg and a first. I would trade a first round pick and I follow for Forsberg because I think
Actually,
it makes the most sense.
I think I take back on the first round pick because he's making $4 million for the next 4 years. Pretty affordable contract for the scoring he does. So maybe a second,
Yeah,
maybe
but
a
Forsberg, bro, Forsberg's an elite player. You have to trade a first round pick if you're gonna
Okay.
get him.
So before we end this
Yeah.
episode, quickly, what are your picks on where Forsberg lands?
Go-
It's tough to say. I mean, I don't see it going anywhere.
So you say he stays in Nashville.
I think they're just gonna keep him anyways. He's most likely gonna, change team in the off season. It's sad to say, but you're going for. There's a chance that you win the Stanley Cup, even though it's unlikely and they're kind of underdogs. You still need to keep your best scorer.
Yeah,
You know,
I think if he does get moved, It's to a team like New Jersey, Detroit, LA that have the picks, they have the prospects, and they have the cap space.
I'm gonna go with LA. I think he goes to
Perfect.
LA.
Anyways, guys, just want to say thank you so much for listening to our episode. Let us know in the comment section below. Does Filip Forsberg sign an extension with the Nashville Predators, or does he get traded? And is it a hockey deal, or is it going to be a deal where they get picks, prospects, and maybe a bad contract in return or something like that, like an NHL player to make it work? So yeah, we'd like to hear what you guys have to say, and look out for upcoming trade destination videos. Again, we're trying to keep up with the latest trade rumors heading into the 2022 trade deadline. So that's going to be very interesting. Make sure to check out our whole trade destination series. There's a lot of names that we mentioned that have yet to be traded, and there's 3 weeks left and heading towards the deadline. So it's going to be very interesting. It could be that everyone gets traded the last week, or maybe things start heating up this week or next week. So look out for more content. Thank you guys once again for always supporting us. Let's try to hit 500 subscribers, and then obviously our the end game of hitting 1K. So thank you so much, guys. We'll see you on the next episode.